begin with an acknowledgement of country. Nunjarapan Wajak Noongar Budja Yakan Nidja Bilya Barduk. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. Nan Kadach Noongar Mort Ken Kadak Nidja Wajak Noongar Budja. Nan Kadach Nidja Noongar Brudia Kura Yeye. Border Balapan Mordich Noongar Kadajan Mort Where Budja Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nanyunka Balapan Noongar Brudia Where Mort Nidja Budja. I thank them for the contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region. Item 4 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. 4.1, the purpose of the Agenda Briefing Forum. The purpose of this forum is to provide an opportunity for elected members to ask questions and obtain information on officer reports in the draft Ordinary Council meeting agenda. It is not a decision-making forum, nor is it open for debate. Members of the public that may be directly affected by an item on the agenda may make presentations, deputations, statements and ask questions prior to the meeting matter being formally considered by Council at the next Ordinary Council meeting. 4.2, notice of recording and live streaming. All participation in the meeting will be audio recorded and live streamed on the town's website. The live stream will be archived and made available on the town's website after the meeting. 4.3, conduct of the meeting. All those in attendance are expected to extend due courtesy and respect to the meeting by refraining from making any adverse or defamatory remarks regarding council, the staff or any elected member. No one shall create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings through expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. All questions and statements made by members of the public are not to personalise any elected member or member of staff. Questions and statements are to be directed to the presiding member, who may choose to call upon an officer of the town or another elected member to assist with responses. 4.4 is public participation time. There is an opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the beginning and the end of this forum. The opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the end of the meeting is limited to those members of the public who did not participate in the first public participation time at this meeting. Participation in public participation time is limited to questions that relate to agenda items only. Those wishing to ask questions or make statements about general matters that are not on the Council's agenda need to come back to the Ordinary Council meeting, which will be held in 2 weeks' time. Public participation will normally be held for a maximum of 30 minutes. Any additional time must be by agreement from the elected members present and will be done in 5-minute increments. Our usual practice is to limit questions to 3 per person and 2 minutes allocated for statements. That is so that we can offer everyone who wishes to ask questions and make statements a fair and equal opportunity to do so. However, if there are very few people in the public gallery, we can be more generous with the number of questions and the time for statements. 4.5, questions taken on notice. Responses to any questions tonight that are taken on notice relating to an agenda item will be presented in the officer report for the Ordinary Council meeting agenda under the heading Further Consideration. Item 5 on the agenda is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance except for we have Councillor Daniel Minson and Councillor Jessie Hamer on approved leave of absence. We have a number of members of the town's executive management and staff led by our CEO, Mr. Carl Askew, also in attendance. Item 6 is declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
I've received none, Mayor Vernon.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest from anyone who hasn't yet submitted one? No? All right. There being no declarations of interest, we'll move right along. So the next item is public participation time, which is item 7, which I'll open at 6:35 p.m. and ask, are there any questions or statements that members of the public in the gallery would wish to make relating to any of the items on tonight's agenda? No? All right. Then I will close public participation time at 6:36 p.m. Item 8 on the agenda is presentations. We have none. Item 9 is deputations. We have none. Item 10, method of dealing with agenda business. We have, as per our usual practice, noted down questions that have been received already from elected members in relation to a number of items. I'm going to read those items out. If elected members either A, want to add further items on the agenda into the list, or B, you've received the answers to your questions already and you don't wish to ask any questions on that item that is listed, let me know and we can take it off the list. So the items are 12.1, which is 40 km/h speed on local streets, request to proceed to community engagement phase. 12.2, draft Oat Street Station Precinct Plan and Scheme Amendment, request to proceed to public advertising. 12.3, proposed naming changes in the Edward Millen precinct, and 14.3, mid-year budget review 2024 to 2025. Now, are there any other items on the agenda that elected members would wish to have added into that list? No? Are there any of those 4 items that elected members who've already submitted questions have had their answers and they don't wish to proceed with them tonight? No, so we'll work on that basis then. We'll go with those items and those items only. So item 12.1, 40 kilometre speed on local streets, request to proceed to community engagement phase. Councillor Kreuzer, I understand you have some questions.
Thank you. My first question is, could you explain a little bit more about why the inner city group is focusing on 40 kilometres an hour rather than 30 kilometres per hour, which is shown by the evidence to be much safer?
I'm going to direct that question to our Chief Community Planner, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks, Councillor Kreuzer, for your question. The reason why we're focusing on 40 kilometres is because the current speed limit on local roads is 50 kilometres per hour. And so we've made a decision as a Perth Inner City group to really focus on the next increment. So rather than try and bite off more than we can chew and go from 50 to 30 or even 30 in select areas, maybe school zones, we've really tried to focus on 50 to 40 in local roads because it is the next increment down from 50. Yep.
And given that it is much safer where we have high traffic, especially from children, would it make sense to fold in engagement around 30 kilometres in school zones to accompany the shift to 40 kilometres per hour on local roads?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Conceptually, going to 30 kilometres in a school zone would be something that administrative would conceptually support, but we wouldn't support it in the context of this project, which is really around shifting the speed limit, endeavouring to shift the speed limit from 50 to 40 on local roads. And so we don't want to confuse the matter by including other proposals. We really want to try and keep the ask and the community engagement very focused on an incremental change from 50 to 40 in local roads.
Thanks, Councillor Kreuzer. Are there any other questions about this item? No? All right. We will then move on to 12.2, which is draft Oat Street Station Precinct Plan and Scheme Amendment, request to proceed to public advertising. Councillor Devereux, you have some questions?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Vernon. My question relates to the precinct plan, and I wanted to just pick up on the fact that in the April 24 OCM, Council passed a motion on item 12.3, which was the State Development Assessment Unit referral for the proposed residential apartments and commercial tenancy. This motion called for a range of sustainability conditions on the Bank Street multi-storey apartment block if it was approved. And I wanted to ask a question, given that motion was approved unanimously by Council, would it be possible to include the same or similar conditions for all multi-storey apartment blocks in the current Oates Street precinct plan and scheme amendment?
May I direct that question to Mr Hobbs, our Manager of Place Planning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So conditions of development approval are informed by the planning framework, which includes the local planning scheme and structure plans, amongst other things. And these are applied to development applications through that development application process on a case-by-case basis. Provisions within the draft Oates Street Station precinct structure plan include provisions related to sustainability and environmental performance, which would include informing those types of conditions being applied to development approvals. But it's not the purpose of the structure plan to be able to apply them to all developments at this point in time. It's the informing document for those decisions.
Anything further?
So if I can just follow up on that. So just to clarify, so then if Council wanted to be more specific in any regard, then the place to do it then, would that be in the structure plan report where, for example, in section 4.4.2, it talks about sustainability and environmental performance? Would that be the place where adaptations or suggestions could be posed?
Mr Hobbs?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Without knowing the specific nature of what might be included, the sustainability and environmental performance section of the structure plan would generally be the most logical location for those provisions to be located, but it would depend on their nature. There may be other places within the structure plan for them as well.
Many thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. Are there any other questions about this particular item? I just wanted to ask one. With regards to the name of this as the Oates Street Station Precinct Structure Plan, noting how wide the geographical boundary is, according to the mapped documentation before us, what is the rationale for calling it Oates Street Station Precinct as opposed to simply Oates Street Precinct, given it extends well outside the station and one of the sub-parts to it is called the station area and the other parts are not? Mr Hobbs.
Thank you, Mayor. That's an excellent question. I believe it is on the basis that that is how the neighbourhood, which is essentially the geographical area of the Oates Street Station Precinct, is defined in the local planning strategy, and that naming has been continued. That's not to say that it needs to be the name of the precinct plan itself.
Thank you. If I could just then follow up, if it were to be called the Oates Street Precinct Plan, do you see there being any potential issues with that? If the station part was removed from it to give it, I'll call it a broader sounding remit. Mr Hobbs?
We might have to take that one on notice. I wouldn't think so, but yeah, we might need to do a bit more research on that one.
All right, be happy if we can take that on notice, thank you. I'd just be curious to know what the answer to that is. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Devereux?
Maybe just thinking about Mayor Vernon's question, I wonder whether the use of the word station in the title, does that, would it possibly create an image of a sense of transit-oriented development, that sense that the precinct does have a significant point within it that is a train station that is therefore available for people when they think about the precinct and how it might be used, how it might be developed and that sort of thing? Would there be any rationale in that sense for including it in the title, even though at one level it might seem very specific?
Mr Hobbs?
Potentially the rationale for that name is the fact that the station is the sort of grounding feature and central point of the area. As far as people identifying with the broader precinct or not through that, I wouldn't think it is a major factor from the purpose of the planning framework.
Anything further of anyone? No? All right. We'll move on to 12.3, proposed naming changes in the Edward Millen precinct. Councillor Anderson, you had a question that you wish to ask?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. In the community consultation, there's feedback to suggest that the precinct was once significant as a birthplace for Indigenous women. Does the town have a record of this?
Direct that question to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks, Councillor Anderson, for the question. No, the town does not have a record to substantiate this. We don't. No.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
No. All right. I have some questions that I sent through earlier today, and I'm grateful to have received answers to that so that I can understand. Given that community consultation was undertaken as to the name change in 2021 and overwhelmingly endorsed the renaming of the park and the house to Elizabeth Bailey Park and House, on what basis did the town not follow Resolution 94 of 2021 and proceed to submit the application for the name change to the appropriate authorities? Direct that question to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, for your question. Yes, it has been a while, so there are various factors that have contributed to the delays in progressing actions associated with that resolution. They include delays in the progress of the Edward Millen redevelopment project itself, further historical research including a detailed descendant search, liaison with DPLH, the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and also Landgate regarding the naming process requirements. The preparation of the town's reconciliation action plan and liaison as part of that consultation process required to undertake with Mindira working group regarding recognition of First Nations and considering dual naming opportunities.
Thank you. What is the purpose of naming the playground Mildred Creek other than to recognise the significant contribution of medical practitioner Dr. Mildred Creek in relation to the medical treatment of autism? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The purpose of naming the playground Mildred Creek is to recognise the significant contribution of Dr. Mildred Creek to the medical treatment of autism, and also to tell the history of the site through the use of names associated with its previous uses, including the Mildred Creek Centre that formerly operated at the site. Attachment 12.3.3 of the report, Edward Millen Redevelopment Project Heritage Interpretation Strategy, provides further details on the significance of Mildred Creek to the site and rationale for recognising her in the naming of the new inclusive play area.
Thank you. Is a council resolution required in order to give the playground a name, which I assume would be reflected in some signage? Mr. Doy?
It's not a requirement to have council resolution to name a playground.
Thank you. A follow-up's not one of the questions I submitted, but if it's not a requirement to have a council resolution to name the playground, and you've referred to the heritage interpretation strategy, is there a need for council then to make such a resolution in order for the town staff to deliver on that heritage interpretation strategy, Mr. Doy?
There's not an absolute need. We thought it would be in council's interest to be able to resolve, but there is not a strict need for council to name the playground.
Thank you. Paragraph 22 of the officer's report is inconsistent with Resolution 94 of 2021. Is there any reason why the park's renaming as Elizabeth Bailey Park cannot proceed now and any future proposal for a dual naming be done at a later stage, given that it appears from the material in the officer report that the cultural mapping work, advisory and consultation process is likely to take a considerable period of time? Mr. Doy?
Yes, so obviously Resolution 94, 2021 endorses the town to undertake consultation on specific renaming options, which the town has done. However, council could absolutely proceed with an application to rename Edward Millen Park to Elizabeth Bailey Park and consider dual naming at a later stage.
Thank you. As a follow-up question to that, is it your understanding that if we were to go through the Landgate Geographic Names Committee for the park, which I understand is all we'd have to do because the House doesn't require any such approval to rename, is it your understanding that process would be able to be completed in time for the expected completion by Black Oak of their works in December of this year for the reopening of the new redeveloped precinct and our own park upgrade? Mr. Doy?
I feel confident that we would, but I will take it on notice just to provide a detailed answer so we can feel confident about the timing.
All right, thank you. If we take that on notice about the likely timing to submit an application for a renaming of the park, thank you. And not sure if you can answer this one, but how soon could the town submit an application to the Geographic Names Committee for the renaming of the park? Were council to pass such a resolution this month to go ahead and get the park renamed at this stage? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. We could submit an application within a month.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I had with regards to this item. Are there any other questions relating to this? Nope. All right. 14.3 is mid-year budget review. Councillor Anderson, you had some questions?
I'm happy with the email response that I've received, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I'm also listed down as having questions to ask, which I did send through the beginning of today, and for those who haven't seen the reply, indicates that the information needs to come from across offices and will take some time to be provided and can't be done in time for tonight. So I understand a response will be issued out to council once those details are available. So I don't need to ask all of those questions. So they are the only items that were on the agenda for dealing with tonight. So that takes us to item 16 on the agenda, which is motion of which previous notice has been given. There is none. Item 17 is public participation time, which I now open at 6:53 p.m. and ask, is there anyone who wishes to ask a question or make a statement in relation to any of the items on tonight's agenda? No, everybody's shaking their head. All right. I close public participation time at 6:53 p.m. Item 18, questions from members without notice on general matters. Are there any questions on general matters? No? All right, there being no questions. Item 19 on the agenda is confidential matters. We don't have any. And so at 6:54 p.m, our agenda briefing forum is closed. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time at the ordinary council meeting. Thank you. you.